Good afternoon. Welcome to KTN Newsdesk. My name is Betty Kialo. Trust you're keeping warm this afternoon. This is Newsdesk, and we begin now. Now, the 2014 Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education examinations began in earnest this morning with no reported glitches. Candidates around the country began with English composition, which is paper 1, and at 11 a.m. sat for the English grammar paper 2, with a number of them expressing confidence that they will excel in the examination. Well, that story will be coming to us shortly, but still on examination matters. The Kenya National Union of Teachers Knut Secretary General Wilson Sosion has reiterated that teachers under the umbrella union have no intention of interrupting this year's national examinations. However, he maintained that NAT will still keep piling pressure on the government to increase their salaries. According to Sosion, the final decision on the matter rests with the annual delegates conference slated for December. He was speaking on KTN's Morning Express show earlier this morning.
Not have a strike at the moment. We shall progress with negotiations at the negotiating table, and the progress of the negotiations shall be reported to the supreme organ of the union, the annual delegates conference, between 6th and 9th of December. Thereafter, then a decision can be made.
Now, the move by Parliament to summon cabinet secretaries to appear before the floor of the House is unconstitutional. Well, this is a stand the Constitutional Implementation Commission maintains. CIC Chairman Charles Nyachae says that the routine sermons of the cases before both the Parliamentary committees and the General Oversight Committee violates the Constitution order. The National Assembly last week suspended the sitting meant for today to address outstanding legal issues.
What we are saying is that what Parliament or the National Assembly has sought to do here it violates the Constitution. It is clearly an attempt to sidestep the provisions of the Constitution, which provide for Parliament through committees to call anybody, not just CSS, anybody. All of us appear before parliamentary committees every other week to call anybody to answer questions on specific issues.
Oscar Pistorius has been sentenced to 5 years in jail for killing his model girlfriend, Rewa Steenkamp. South African Judge Thokozile Masipa made the landmark ruling this morning, stating she wanted to find a balance between retribution, deterrence, and rehabilitation. Those pictures and that story will be coming in shortly. But moving on, an ownership tussle between a petrol station operator in Kisumu and the owner of the land on which the station stands has turned after a court issued an eviction order that precedes a hearing. As a result, owners of Alpha Petrol Station in Rabuor, Kisumu have watched helplessly as their facility is damaged and more than 2 million shillings worth of fuel that they left behind and are unable to access is sold off. The owner of the land, who admits leasing the station to the operator, says he had to evict Alpha's operators because they were vandalizing the facility, but refused to comment on why the court order came before a hearing between the two parties.
We evicted the court order, which is not ours, reading Abdel Razak Ado Hassan versus Lazarus Okello, and reading Alpha Petrol Station while we are Alpha Petroleum Limited. The court did what it did. We were never summoned. We were never given notices. We were evicted. We have lost millions, money in millions.
What he had put makeshift here. My station was not makeshift. It was not makeshift. It was made of stone. He put my bodies here. Those are nonsense. The toilet. He didn't even, he wasn't cleaning the toilets. What do you do with such a guy? No insurance.
He was arrested and dragged into a police car in broad daylight by officers from the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit. That statement would make it seem like city businessman Ali Aden's arrest was ordinary, but is it anything normal? Ali Aden, who is now at the center of what appears to be an intricate, well-woven web of corruption involving officers from the Flying Squad and the ATPU. Well, here is John Alanamu's report on a situation that it would seem has the man in handcuffs being innocent and the criminals wearing uniform.
On Wednesday last week, we captured images of this man, who we later identified as Kenyan businessman Ali Aden, being arrested and dragged away by officers from the Flying Squad and the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit. The running narrative about Aden being that he was a wanted terrorist who had finally been nabbed. Before going on air, we reported the incident to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit.
The police then assured both IPOA and the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights that they were going to release him.
The case ought to have ended there, but it hasn't. Almost 1 week after this dramatic arrest, and he's being taken back to his home for a search of his documents, Ali Aden is still in custody in blatant disregard of the habeas corpus laws that he be produced in court and charged within 48 hours of his arrest.
We will do everything we can to work with IPOA, to work with the police to make sure that he's released as soon as possible.
But the law, it would seem, is the last thing on the minds of some of the officers who arrested Aden. On Friday the 17th of October, using this line 0786 548 748, an officer holding Aden called Aden's relatives. The conversation that ensued is telling.
Ali kuabi ako batia no ye nunga ye Ali meesha hadan ka soo baxayna marka lacagta ka rabaan 100 kun miya marka mukdeeniya lama tahan 100 markan keenna muksideeniyaan ila mandaya may maanta di gudaniya 100 ko keenayna marka ofiisaga ma tahay meesha uu ma laha ishago meesha ni maana ofiisaga xageed waa meesha maana bila yaqmiya haye halo ofiisa nakuuliza sijui nikuje wapi nikuje Flying Squad ama nikuje kwa Anti-Terror mimi sasa natoka tu hapa karibu Uhuru Park natoka nataka kutoka huko Nairobi najua Nairobi hapo tu mahali Ali hapo tu ukiingia hapa kwa gate sawa haya nikuje huko kwa hiyo nini Anti-Terror hapa kwa ofisi yao nilete 1100 hiyo anasema Ali 1100 anasema Ali nilete hiyo ako hapa lakini nilete pesa hiyo 1100 hiyo ndio namwambia ukifika hapo nipige simu.
After this conversation, showing an apparent attempt to extract a bribe from Ali Aden's family, his family forwarded the details of this conversation to Leo Nyongesa, the officer in charge of reforms at the National Police Service, for action. Action was promised but not taken against at least 2 officers who are said to be holding Aden, identified by name, who are involved in a case.
It's a matter of cardinal concern if indeed there are still elements within the police service who are resorting to extortion as a means of fighting terrorism, because it can't work. It's never worked before, it's not going to work.
Ali has been transferred to at least 3 police stations in the city since his arrest, with no communication about what charge he's being held on. Ali is said to have been arrested after a land deal between him and a city businessman went bad, with claims that the businessman may have used influence within the police force to effect this arrest.
The greatest roadblock to effective government is corruption. Asking for bribes or paying them weakens systems and destroys hope.
Taking the case of Ali Aden into perspective, then it's no small irony that President Uhuru Kenyatta would spend quite a bit of his speech today addressing the issue of corruption in government and how it weakens systems. Tonight, he's going to spend his night at the Kilimani police station, the 5th night in police custody, without being produced before a court or being charged. John Allen Amu, KTN, Nairobi.
Critical questions there. Let's move on to our top story. And the 2014 Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education examinations began in earnest this morning with no reported glitches. Candidates around the country began with English composition, which is paper 1, and at 11 a.m. start for the English grammar paper 2, with a number of them expressing confidence that they will excel in the examinations.
6:30 a.m. and the helicopter leaves Wilson Airport. In the aircraft are examination papers bound for far-reaching areas like Turkana, Samburu and northern Kenya. By 7:30 a.m. candidates were ready for their first paper, English composition, with some confident that come 2015 their names will be called out by the Cabinet Secretary of Education.
We've done a lot of preparation and we've really invested our time in preparing for this exam that we are going to do, and that's why we believe, as the Form 4s, we call ourselves the Daniels, will emerge the best in the country.
The teachers have also done their best, academic-wise. The guidance and counseling department has spent a lot of time with them so that they can know how to behave during the exams.
In Nairobi at 8 a.m., the supervisors count down the candidates as they begin the first paper.
The only hiccups we have experienced actually at the correction center, more especially for the last 1 week, where we could pick papers and wait for the security. Seemingly, there was poor coordination from up, because the security people told us they were not aware of the starting of dates of the exam.
Exams started well in Nyeri, especially at the Temple Road School, where not-so-young candidates gave it their best. In Kisumu, the script read the same. It was all systems go. Candidates will finish their papers at 2 p.m. this afternoon and will sit for their Kiswahili papers 1 and 2 tomorrow. Catherine Omwando, KTN.
All the best to all the candidates, both the young and the old. Let's move back to a story we highlighted earlier. And Oscar Pistorius has been sentenced to 5 years in jail for killing his model girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. South African Judge Thokozile Masipa made the landmark ruling this morning, stating she wanted to find a balance between retribution, deterrence and rehabilitation.
From a globally lauded athlete to a convicted killer, Oscar Pistorius' fall from grace culminated this morning with a 5-year sentence in the shooting of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. The sentence was imposed for the charge of culpable homicide, which in South Africa means a person was killed unintentionally but unlawfully. His lawyers, however, have argued that Pistorius would be more vulnerable than most in prison because of his disability, calling for 3 years of correctional supervision, which is the equivalent of house arrest. They also suggested that Pistorius could carry out 16 hours of community service a month, cleaning a Pretoria museum. Looking sad and donning a dark suit and tie, Pistorius made his way through a throng of media and onlookers to hear his punishment after being found guilty last month of culpable homicide. In the opening session, Judge Thokozile Masipa emphasized that the decision on sentencing would be hers and hers alone. Masipa then began to outline the arguments given by defense witnesses at the sentencing hearing last week. After the sentencing, prosecutor Harry Nell said such a sentence was shockingly inappropriate and could cause South Africans to lose faith in their legal system. During his trial, the double amputee sprinter often sobbed at the mention of his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp's name. He insisted that he mistook his girlfriend for an intruder when he shot her through a toilet door on Valentine's Day 2013. Betty Kyalo, KTN.
With that, we take a short commercial break to pay the bills. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Time for business. Now, Kenya Power has tendered for supplies for the 10 billion shilling street lighting project. The tender seeks partners to supply street lighting materials as the government steps up efforts to light up Nairobi. According to the tender statement in the dailies, Nairobi has over 31,000 street lights, but over 40% of which don't work. This has restricted business transactions and productive activities to the daytime owing to limitations of nighttime visibility and fears of insecurity. Kenya Power will be spending close to 1 billion shillings repairing damaged lights, while 9 billion shillings has been allocated to installing 13,000 new public lighting masts and 54,000 street lights. The industrial zones that will benefit from the project include Babadogo, Kariobangi, Light Industries and Industrial Area, Kamukunji and Gikomba, as well as the Central Business District and Westlands will also be lit up, as well as residents of Isili, Kahawa West, Buruburu and Embakasi neighborhoods. Under fire, Kenya Tea Development Agency has welcomed proposals from the Ministry of Agriculture to set up a stabilization fund to cushion farmers from losses. KTDA Chairman Peter Kanyango says the move is a step in the right direction, even as the agency is questioned as to how it handles smallholder tea farmers. KTDA says the move has been long overdue, given increased competition in the global tea market. Oversupply of tea in the market has significantly depressed prices, which led to lower bonuses during the year. The chairman, however, rejected claims that KTDA was to blame for the reduced tea prices at the Mombasa auction, adding that looking for alternative markets for Kenyan tea would be needed to boost farmers' returns. For more than 2 decades, the lives of most Somalis were changed by violence and instability. Today, a fragile peace in Mogadishu is allowing for an economic and cultural revival, but security remains a huge challenge.
From a back room in his Mogadishu home, Aden Farah Afe is painting his vision of Somalia, one marked by ongoing violence and corruption, but also a renewed sense of hope. Afe discovered painting as a child in a Catholic orphanage in the city, but for much of his life, he's had to hide his talent.
I officially restarted working in the arts after Shabab were ousted from the capital because they believe that working in the arts is a crime. Anyone who says that art is a crime is against all forms of education. Language, for example, can't be learned without painting and drawing.
Like Afe, many residents of the capital are beginning to embrace a fragile peace after more than 20 years of violence and instability. The Heritage Institute of Policy Studies, after analyzing data collected by more than 1,600 people, recently published a survey on the perceptions of security in Mogadishu.
The result was that they said they feel a lot safer and more optimistic compared to the last 2 or 3 years, and that the security situation is improving.
Still, things are far from stable. The Al-Qaeda-linked Shabab were forced out of Mogadishu in 2011, but still stage frequent attacks in the city and control many rural areas. But for many Somalis, this remains a marked improvement on past decades of violence. After graduating from university in Ethiopia, Fuad Abdullahi Hassan returned to Somalia to set up Coffee House with 3 friends. He says it's up to young people like himself to build something meaningful from this renewed confidence.
We're optimistic and hope next year things will be much better than they are now. We should stay in our country. You know, most of the young people have fled the country, but we decided to stay in our homeland and invest in it.
Somalia still has a long way to go, but the cultural and economic revival that Afe and Hassan are a part of offers a glimpse of a future for the country beyond war.
Right, that's where we wind up this edition of KTN Newsdesk. Thank you very much for watching. See you again tomorrow. God bless.